better than ever. And I know right now that I'm going somewhere and I need some cheddar. Oh, baby, better.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Andre Luck here with my next episode of the Sports Sales Show. Where I'm going to talk through forecasting and how you can better forecast and measure your pipeline using AI. So that's a black box for a lot of leaders, and you kind of left hoping and guessing and maybe looking at historical numbers and hoping that that's going to reign true and get you to your numbers. But with AI, you can be more consistent with what the forecasting looks like and be able to better project up to your executives, to your CFO, on like what is actually a real deal and have that conversation with your reps. So we're going to talk through that, do a walkthrough with AI, show you how to build this yourself in AI and how you could use this better as a leader and even as a rep as you're looking to forecast and project out. So for those not as familiar with sales, like forecasting is having a good understanding of like what's in your pipeline and what should come to be a deal. And obviously not everything's going to convert, but maybe you use a percentage of like X number of deals we close at 75% once they get to this stage. And so then you can look and say, here's how much in my pipeline, but we expect, based on historicals and just what the projections are, percentages are, how much should come out. So forecasting ahead of like what revenue should be coming in. And a lot of times like that's just unknown. And where managers live today is they kind of just take the rep's word for it. They're like, hey, what do you have in your pipeline? They come, no one wants to say they don't have anything in their pipeline, or they overinflate and maybe to buy themselves time, or they really think that a deal is going to come through because they haven't heard no yet. And what we need to do is have an objective, kind of unbiased coach in there who's looking at the deal, and that's where AI can come in and help with that. So we'll talk through that today. But current state, like I said, a lot of managers are kind of taking word from the rep. They're not in the deals, so you kind of just trust and hope that it comes through without strong criteria that they're checking and kind of validating, is this deal real? And like I said, you kind of just look back and hope, and this rep did X amount before, so hopefully they'll get to it again. But if there's a lot of factors that go into that. How's in sports? How's your team performing? How much demand is coming to you? You can't project that. Those are things that are sometimes out of your control. So you want to have a good understanding of what's controllable in your pipeline for yourself. So if you're pacing behind where you need to be, you can make sure that, all right, we increase the volume or quality or do better coaching, whatever it may be. But then also you can alert your leaders early of like, hey, we're not ahead of where we need to be, or we're behind where we need to be, or we are ahead, and they can better plan accordingly. Like I've seen teams even work for some where we were so far ahead of our forecasting and our goals that allowed the sports side. So for me in baseball, the baseball side to be like, hey, we can go out and get more players, and that actually led to us, winning a World Series one year. So there's a lot that goes into this, and just being a smart business person, and also myself being entrepreneurship, it's important to understand and forecast and project out how much revenue is going to come in, so I could forecast and project out how much I'm going to be spending. And so you need your sales leaders to kind of do that for you. For me, like when I was running these deal meetings and forecast meetings, part of it was kind of mandated. So like no one was really excited about it in the first place. But even then, it was just kind of just like storytelling of like, hey, here's where I'm at with this deal. Here's what happened. There wasn't really any quality control checks in there. We're just kind of just going through the motions. And as I look back a couple of years now, I think it was beneficial to some extent, but the end goal of what we really wanted to know what was there and how others can maybe opine and help out and maybe coach people through that probably wasted people's time a little bit. So I think at the end of the day, if you have something that could be that objective quality control piece that's going to help make the most of those sessions, have leaders be better coaches and reps better understand what they need to do to get to a point where they have a deal that's quality, and not just to tell their leaders they have stuff in their pipeline, but like these are actually going to help you. This is actually going to help you do a better job in your sales process, because you know that if I don't have these 3 or 4 criteria, a deal typically doesn't happen. And so that's what we'll talk through, and what we'll go through and build out and show you how to do that with AI here in a little bit. So when you don't have a quality control like that, or you don't have strong deal coaching, whatever it may be, what that leads to, again, it's tough for leadership to forecast, tough for you to forecast and know where you're at. You start to lose trust of your leaders. Like, hey, this person doesn't really have a good hold or grasp on their business, and so that starts to erode trust with leadership, which never a great place to be as a senior leader. You kind of go just off gut feel of what the reps are saying, and you kind of trust that person more because they've sold more, and this person less because maybe they haven't closed as much, but there could be some real deals in there. And if we know what's really holding it back, we can either come in as leaders, maybe we could bring in like our president or CRO to the deal, or just, hey, this is not where it needs to be. Still work on it. Still, but here's the 3 things that you need to do in your next meeting with them or over the next couple of weeks to get this to the point where we feel comfortable committing this as a potential deal. So again, it just helps kind of coach and everything like that. Um, and then you're not left scrambling at the back end of a deal. That's something I get a lot where you weren't checking it all the way through the deal. You get that email that says, hey, we decided to go in a different direction, or this time's just not the right time. And then you go to your boss, your manager, like, hey, what can we do to save the deal? So you go to discounting. Then you throw in like a signed ball, or we'll give you tickets to the next game or match, whatever it may be. And now you're on your heels versus being proactive, where if you had already known that, there are some things you could have done earlier versus scrambling, where at that point the deal's probably already lost. Like, no one's going to spend, especially a bigger deal, 6, 7 figures because you're going to give them a signed jersey. Like, they should expect that anyways if they're going to commit that much, or they just buy their own if that's really the reason that they're looking to buy. So it leads to a lot of bad behavior when you don't have that structured process for coaching and development and everything like that. So this kind of helps with that, and you can build that with AI. So the ideal state is you have this standardized criteria for what it means to commit to something as a likely to close opportunity. Again, it's not ever 100% until someone signs the deal and actually pays the money, but maybe you say, all right, this goes in our 75% or 80% bucket. And you can kind of take the total revenue in that and say, all right, 80% of that should close. And so over the next 3 months, we know, or whatever time frame that you have, here's how much we expect to close. Here's what we need to do to get back on pace or stay on track, whatever it may be as you look forward. So in that like criteria, maybe there's a couple things you look at, like, all right, we have a decision process identified for how this prospect is going to buy. We know who the economic buyer is. It's the CFO, or it's the head of finance, or the VP of sales has their own budget, and they're the ones that can make the purchase themselves without any upper level approval. There's a clear definitive next step. Maybe that's something that we have in there as our criteria, that we know that if we have a clear next step, there's a higher likelihood that this deal closes and we can commit to that being a deal. Timeline confirmed. That's a big one. Do we know what time frame that they're looking to implement this solution, or when they're trying to make a decision and when they're going to give a final decision to move forward? Those are all like factors that may go into this like report card or scorecard or deal coaching criteria that you have just to help. But a really good place to start is knowing what good looks like for you as a leader. Like, what are the things that when you were selling, or even if you're still actively selling, like what are things and signals that you look for that tell you like this is more likely deal to close or not? What are things that reps tell you that sound good but actually don't lead to sales? And you could work back and forth with AI to kind of do that. And we'll touch on that here in a second. But once you have this agent built, or GPT, whatever it may be, now you upload deal notes from CRM. If you have like call recordings in a centralized place, you could take that. Any context you have in the deal could help, and you upload that into the GPT, and then it kind of inspects it and tells you and gives you like a report card, like green, yellow, red, for example. If you train it to give you like that as an output and say, hey, green, this is good, we can commit this as a potential deal. Red, it's got a lot of red flags, here's the things we need to still do. And now, and it can tell you, hey, here's what to do over the next couple of meetings. So in your next forecast meeting as a rep and as a leader, you're coming prepared to that meeting with, on these 5 deals, here's what I need to do, here's what we're going to talk about, and here's how we're going to work on those next steps. Where a lot of times it's like, hey, what do you have in your pipeline? Like, they're just kind of scrolling through, oh, I got this one deal, I talked to so and so last week, they said they get back to me, or this one, yeah, we got another meeting next week. And that's what a lot of the back and forth is, which isn't terrible, but there's no clear structure and consistency across that. And real coaching is happening. You're kind of just getting updates, which is stuff that you could probably just use and look in your CRM yourself if you really wanted to, and just see where it's at in the process. But like, what's missing? What are the risks? What are the potential red flags that we're not thinking of? What are things we could do to move this forward or gain momentum or keep the momentum going because the deal's stalling? All those are things that AI could help you do. So I did this actually with the Titans a couple months ago. I was working with their leaders and talking through this as one of the use cases. And what I build a lot of the GPTs or agents with AI. And what I had instructed to do is, hey, ask me, a minimum of 10 questions, but continue to ask more until you have a good feel of like how I evaluate deals as a leader. And so it asked me a bunch of multiple choice questions like, all right, when a rep has this type of deal, what is it that you look for? At this stage in the process, what do you expect to see? And it gets what I find is like valuable coaching and like what I know that's going to lead to a forecastable deal and builds out these instructions or at least like a final output of like, hey, based on everything you said, here's what you look for in a deal. You want me to build out an agent for you or give you instructions you could upload into an agent. So I go back and forth, and I think that's a great way to get like what's out of your head because maybe you don't know where to start. And if you just default to ChatGPT or whatever AI tool that you use, Claude, it's just going to give you a generic, hey, here's what should go into deal coaching. But like, what's specific to you? What's specific to your team? What are those like kind of feel? They call it taste, like those type of things that you just know that general AI is not going to account for. And so that's why it's important to do this whole back and forth and the multiple choice and ask you questions and whatever it may be to get to it. Hey, here's what I'm hearing from you. You validate it. It's a good V1, but then you maybe, hey, you gave me this, but actually here's more what I look for. Maybe do like a second version of questions based on that, and get to a document of instructions that, based on your answers, everything like that, you can now upload into an agent or chat GPT or into a GPT for deal coaching that's based on how you coach a deal and what you know is important to you for your role, because it may be different for group sales versus premium sales versus corporate partnerships, whatever it may be, and use AI to build that out. Now, every deal you put through this is going through the same quality control check. It's all consistent. It's not, in the moment, how did you feel? Or were you like off your game? Did you come out of a meeting and you weren't focused when you had to jump into the next meeting? Like you put it through that as like a first check. And then you can add your own context or whatever it may be to it, or the rep could add additional context. But if you're working off the same kind of equal, consistent scorecard to determine if this is a deal or not getting emotional or trying to fight for a deal that may not be there, like an objective perspective point of view that's unbiased that could tell you that. So what we'll do next is actually do a walkthrough. So I did this in Chat GPT. I built a agent, and for this exercise, I just had it build it. Like I said, it comes generic. What I would do if this were me, I would actually take the time to like answer questions on how I evaluate deals, and use that to build out my agent so that it's actually going through for my team and what I'm selling for, what my team's selling for. It's more customized to that versus just me. So, all right, let me share my screen here. And so we have a couple hypothetical scenarios. It did like 3 different deals that it would go through. All right, let's go here. Cool. All right, so I built the GPT here. We can look into some of the instructions here. So of what I built. So in the instructions, this GPT helps sales leaders and reps evaluate deal health. So everything we talked about, the core philosophy, the user will input, these things into the GPT, and it's going to give me a risk score, green, yellow, red. So all the instructions that go into like what you need to do whenever I put something in, even like the tone and style, direct, no fluff, blunt but constructive, focused on action, no generic sales advice, speak like an experienced CRO, not a trainer. So whatever those like nuances are that are important to you, you put that into your GPT. So I'll click here. Have a couple scenarios that I'm going to upload into this. All right, let me share this tab instead. So you could look at a couple deals that I put here. So there's 3 different deals. This one looks good, but isn't. Silent risk. So a couple notes from that. We had 2 strong calls. Next steps, follow up later this week. Recent activity, no response in 3 days. So this is a lot of what, as a leader, you hear, hey, where are you at with this deal? We think it'll close at the end of the month. Got a follow up later this week. Got a couple good calls. Sent a proposal. And that's kind of all you're working off as a leader. So me, I'd look at that and be like, oh, okay, cool. Like we have a potential deal worth $85,000, but they're only connected with the director of marketing. They're single threaded. That's the only person they have. Hey, I will pull that out. And I might not be on my game that day and not miss that because I'm hearing all the stuff and the stories around like why this is a good deal. And I'm like, okay, cool, sounds good. I have a second deal I'll put through it. Good deal, needs coaching. Close date next month. Value, all sounds good. Got a couple more contacts, so it's a little stronger. Proposal walkthrough scheduled for next week. So AI will pull out like what potential and what makes this a yellow, like a good deal, but still needs some coaching. And then it'll also call out here, deal 3, as we put it through, why this is a good deal, what that looks like. So let me copy and paste these. I'm going to put that back into the GPT that we created. All right, so we put all 3 deals in. All right, and so it said deal 1, red. Forecast category pipeline, do not commit. So wouldn't commit to this. Why the deal feels good. This deal feels good because there was interest, no pricing pushback, and proposal went out. None of that proves it is real. Well, it's actually true. You only have one contact. The contact is not confirmed as a buyer. There's no decision process. So it calls out all these things where a rep, it sounds good because no one told you no. And as a manager, I'm like, oh, sounds like we got, a deal cooking here. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things in here that are silent risk. And it gives a breakdown of what's missing. And top 3 actions: force a live review, multi-thread immediately, so that means get other people involved in the deal, test the close date, even gives you an email to follow up with. So that's example 1. Questions for next call, coaching notes. And so as a rep, with my rep, I would put it through this, be like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And again, this is objective, unbiased. This isn't me like, hey, your deal's not going to come through. A lot of reps will get emotional about that. I've seen that. But like you can hear and like there's just things missing. This is a good way and I would even work with them to build this out or tell them like, hey, here's how I built this out. Here's what I built it on. The factors. This isn't just generic AI. For this example, it is, but the one we'd build together would be. And so they know that, all right, got to do some work because, we're open, we're transparent, we're working through this together as leaders and reps. So deal 2, yellow. All right, why this is a real deal. It tells you why it's real, but is not commit yet. So can't commit to this being something that we think is going to close or have a high likelihood to close. Finance approval is required. Economic buyer approver access is not confirmed. ROI matters, but proof is not yet fully established. You are still pre-proposal acceptance. This is coachable, not broken. All right, so it tells you what's missing. Top 3 actions to take, an email that you can draft, and then questions for the next call. So although it's a little better, a little further along, like, hey, it still may close, but here are a couple things that you could do. And then green, why this sounds like a go on. This was the regional bank one. This is what a real late stage deal looks like. Clear business objective, ROI model built jointly, CFO aligned on the budget, multiple senior stakeholders engaged. So there's just a lot more that meets our criteria of what a real deal looks like in this. And so now I could feel better forecasting this of like an actual deal that should close and commit to. For the others, if I had projected those in my pipeline, that's another, I forget the exact numbers, but like $300,000-$400,000 I'm saying potentially could come through. So if the CFO sees that, or I'm talking to my CRO as a head of sales, like, we got $1 million in the pipeline. Well, really, there's only one deal that's actually realistic. Now they're falsely projecting what's out there. Again, you start to erode trust when you don't have real numbers and these deals don't start to come through. And this is something, I'd pull my executive leaders into too. Hey, here's how I'm building out, and the CFO, here's how I'm building out my forecast. I'm using this model. Is there anything you would add to this too? So they know. And so when I give them a number, we're all on the same page. We're all talking and working together on what that looks like and why I think that number is accurate. And we're all aligned on, all right, this is what Andre gave me. And we built this model together. This isn't him just giving me random numbers and I'm just trusting him. This helps you kind of align that consistency in a lot quicker time than if you had to sit down in a room and build out this model together and do manual checks on each of the deals. You could just take all the notes you have and at least get a first version of what that looks like. So that's how you build it up. That's how I would use it. Let me stop sharing my screen here. All right. And so that's where AI can really help bring everyone together, bring everyone's thoughts together. And that's what it's really good at, pulling out what are those threads, working with you to get the stuff out of your head and document it into some sort of structure that you could build together. And how you can use AI to better forecast and better understand what's a real deal in the pipeline versus what's kind of a hope or sounds good, and what you need to work on to do that better as a coach and as a leader. So all right. So every episode talked through something that stood out to me. So I've posted a lot over, every day for like the past year and a half. A lot about ticket sales. Posted a couple weeks ago about something around corporate partnerships. How I heard on a podcast that there were three challenges facing corporate partnerships, and I forget the three, but I think it was around having enough talent for corporate partnerships roles, like young talent. Um, I forget the other two, but a lot of feedback back and a lot of comments on that. One of the better posts that I did. So what really stood out to me is not necessarily the topic that I heard on the podcast, but more that there's a lot of corporate partnerships people on LinkedIn that have a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions, and good feedback and things like that. One of the big takeaways was that, yeah, they definitely feel that there could be better development for younger, newer reps that are looking to get into corporate partnerships, because losing those people potentially to other roles, or they get kind of burnt out. The other thing that was kind of consistent across that was, aligning better with ticketing to do a better job of we're selling very similar products, and so it's a very similar sales motion as what it is in ticket sales, just a different product and probably a different type of buyer. So that's a good pipeline, or just better job of working together. A lot of times those departments are siloed, where you're generating revenue for the organization and probably talking to a lot of the same people, or tickets can be a pipeline to get people that maybe did tickets to now do corporate partnerships. So a lot of opportunities there. I think a lot of people know that, but actually putting that into motion and how that looks is important. So that's what stood out to me. A lot of corporate partnerships people on LinkedIn with a lot of thoughts. Shout out. Shout out, this one's personal. My oldest daughter, she turns 10 tomorrow from when I'm recording this, so April 6th. She's usually in here a lot of times when I do it. So she didn't hear the shout out today, so I'll have to tell her I gave her a shout out on my show this week. But yeah, crazy. Brittany and I have been a parent for 10 years now coming up. We did a trip to Disney World this week and got to celebrate her. So she was really excited. She loved it. Had a great time. So shout out to Bella. She's turning 10 this week. So, all right, in cleosing, this is another opportunity for AI just give you more consistency across your processes as a leader, even as a rep. If you're learning this now as a rep, imagine where 3 to 5 years where you'll be as a leader. So next week, what we'll do is kind of wrap up everything. We talked about AI use cases for reps, AI use cases for leaders, and where AI is kind of that connected tissue or connected piece of like all your different tools. So if you plug into your CRM, if you plug into your call recording system, your data management process where you're getting leads, like that could all kind of, if you do it right, connect it all. And that's what we're looking to do in kind of the second version of Journey. Right now, Journey is a lot of what you see, different agents that could help, but now we want to be more of that proactive layer who's calling out like those deals we talked about, not waiting for someone to prompt and be like, hey, here are my deals. Actually looking in your CRM and saying, hey, here's a deal, here's some risks that you have, and here are some next steps that you can take. So we'll talk through a little bit how AI can be more proactive in the future, but also just with even what we have today, how it, kind of is that centerpiece of like all your different connected tools. So talk through that next week. But if this was valuable, you liked it, hit like on the video here. Share this with someone in your network if you think they could see a lot of value from it. Subscribe so you can get updates on future episodes. And like I tell my daughters every morning when I drop them off for school, go be awesome today, and I'll be back next week with another video.
I'm up doing this and I'm gonna be head hunting. Oh baby, don't know. Oh baby, don't go. Oh baby, don't know. Oh baby, don't go.